Hi, this is Carl the Cobra Frutch, and you're watching Lights Out.
This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law, and with me via Zoom at almost 2 o'clock in the morning UK time. Delighted and privileged to be joined by Amer Abdallah. Amir, first of all, thank you very much for taking your time out to speak to us. Understand that you've just landed right now, but yeah, thank you for taking your time out to speak to us. How are you doing?
My pleasure. No, it's good to have. Thank you for having me. Everything is great. Thank you.
That's good to hear. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Amir, first of all, before we talk about, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going to ask you, but every time we speak, we always speak about Badu Jack coming off a thrilling victory against Alunga Makabu, is now a freeweight world champion, the WBC freeweight champion of the world. It just goes to show that age is nothing but a number in the sport of boxing. What can you tell me about how Badu's doing and in terms of what's next for Badu? Because we've just had a couple of big cruiserweight fights announced over here in the UK. So what's next for the WBC cruiserweight champion of the world?
Badu's doing great. Very happy, of course. You know, he's on top of the world right now. 3 divisions, 3 world titles, super middle, light heavyweight, now cruiserweight. And like you said, at the age of 39 years old, you know, that's not something that's an easy accomplishment or accolade. So, and mind you, the phone's ringing a lot. There's a letter out there. Everybody wants a shot at the old man. But at the end of the day, you know, his last performance, he put on one of the best performances of his career, and he's in the driver's there. But how he's doing phenomenal.
Well, as I mentioned, we've obviously had a few big announcements in the UK in terms of the cruiserweight division. We've just had Lawrence Cody versus Chris Smith announced that will take place in May at the Vitality Stadium in Bournemouth. What's next for Badu? Because there are some big fights at cruiserweight. And have you looked at fighters like a Cody, maybe Richard Riakporhe? Because Badu's been in Saudi Arabia, he's fought in the US. Is now the right time to perhaps to be looking to bring Badu over to the UK to fight one of the UK cruiserweights?
No, it's not. And I'll tell you why it's not. Is right now Badu's in the driver's seat. You know, Cody's a great fighter, and we have a good relationship, you know, with his team. You know, Ben and I have been talking about, you know, Richard and him fighting. But look, at the end of it, I mean, when it comes down to it, when you look at Badu's resume and you look at these young champions and their resumes, they're not nearly as established as Badu. And listen, I always say, this is a business disguised as a sport. And every single move that we make for Badu, and now, you know, he's signed with Skill Challenge Promotions. Every single move that we make for Badu has got to be the right move financially for him. It's got to be the right move, you know, for the fights for him. And he's got a lot of great options. What we're going to have is we're going to fight fights and the ones that, you know, pay out the most. And if those guys fit that slot, then wonderful. You know, Badu's the kind of guy that will fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. Our job is to make sure that he fights anybody, anywhere, anytime, the right price, and everything makes sense. So we're looking forward to having an announcement here shortly, but you know, it'll be one step at a time. Again, Badu's in the driver's seat, and we'll see what happens here down the road.
Well, again, I mean, it'd be great to have Badu over in the UK. He's a big name in the UK, but it'd also be great to see perhaps maybe some of the UK fighters be willing to travel to maybe Saudi Arabia or even the United States of America for a potential unification clash. We've obviously just come off the back of the Joyce versus Jiang fight. Did you have a chance to maybe watch the fight or see some of the highlights?
No, like I said, I just landed in LA. I was the Wi-Fi was a little bit spotty, so I kept refreshing to see results. And as soon as I landed, actually, a good friend of mine, Shelly Finkel, was keeping me updated, and he gave me the updates. And what a shocker! What a shocker! You know, disappointing for Joey, but wow, what a win, Zhang, and that's you know, that puts him in a very good position right now. But you know, that's what's beautiful about boxing. Anything can happen at any time. And what is he, like an 11-1 favorite or 6-1 favorite? I read even. That's the beautiful thing about boxing is anything can happen, and that's what happened. Those upsets are what keep fans intrigued and keep you know, the sport alive.
A lot of people over social media claim that Joe struggled to deal with Jay Lee's southpaw stance, and the left hand proved to be a bit too much. I mean, when you're obviously matching fighters, would you say that any southpaw that's a heavyweight is going to cause any heavyweight in the world a problem, whether it be a Joe Joyce or even perhaps a Usyk or a Tyson Fury?
I think that's one of those wild cards in boxing is once you figure out how to fight a southpaw and do it effectively, then you can really deem yourself as an established and a seasoned pro. Um, even when I was fighting, it was very difficult to fight southpaws. I was always saying, man, put them in a division by themselves because they make everything awkward. Everything is the exact opposite of, what you're used to. But look, like, not to bring it back into the conversation, but Badu Jack, when he fought Adonis Stevenson, big, not just a southpaw, but a big punching southpaw. So, and I think those kinds of fights are what give these kind of veterans the kind of experience that they need. And this might be Joe Joyce's experience that he needs in fighting a guy, not just a southpaw, but a big southpaw. And again, I didn't see the fight, but I heard that he was getting clipped with the right hand all night long, and that's what ended up, swelling his eyes shut. But fights like this, and Joe's still young. The one thing about him is he's very resilient, very resilient. He keeps coming forward. He'll just walk guys down. Very strong. He can take shots. But again, you got a big, strong southpaw flipping you time and time again. They say good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. And maybe it was just a bad night at the office for him, but we're giving that experience and ultimately turn into something that's good for him. I'm a big fan of his, by the way.
Well, moving on. Earlier last week, Simon Jordan kind of let the cat slip out the bag with telling all boxing fans that there's rumors in regards to a heavyweight tournament that could potentially be taking place in Saudi Arabia. I spoke to Spencer Fearon today, and he said that Skill Challenge Promotions are the guys that are hoping to sort of bring that tournament together. I understand that you play a huge part with Skill Challenge Promotions. You've been signing good fighters. Your social media followers has been going up on a daily basis. What can you tell us about the potential of that tournament? And is there any truth in it? Are the people from Saudi Arabia looking to put on a blockbuster tournament such as this heavyweight tournament?
Oh, let me say this first of all. Unless an announcement comes from the office of His Highness Prince Khalid Abdulaziz or from Skill Challenge Promotions, all it is talk. Unless you have a formal statement, I think this should be something that is stated as a matter of fact. And unless Skill Challenge Promotions puts it out, the rest is just hearsay gossip at this point. The fights that were discussed, the Wilder AJ fight, the Usyk Fury fight, those are all fights that Saudi Arabia, Prince Khalid, is absolute interest in. And if he has the interest in it, then those fights get made. Not because we're the driving force that can just make any fights. No, but because we have great relationships with those guys. Everybody wants the fights, and it's just a matter of putting it all together. But to answer your question, has a formal offer been made? Has a formal date been set? The answer is no. Talks about a bunch of different fights could surface, and I could tell you the legitimacy of all of them is there is interest in different fights. The answer to all of that is when Prince Khalid is ready to step forward and solidify it, he will, and the fights won't take long to make, whatever they are, whether they're heavyweight fights, light heavyweight fights, cruiserweight fights, the super middleweight fights. There's a ton of excitement going on right now in boxing, 135, 140, 147 pounds. There's a bunch of fights that, we have interest in making. It's just a matter of us, laying out our schedule, putting the timelines and setting the budgets and seeing, what the returns that we want to get on them. And, our parameters of returns are a little bit different than most promoters are. But once Prince Khalid puts his foot down and says, this is the fights that I want, then I go to work, we make them happen. And the announcement will be made officially from the office of Prince Cody.
Well, over the last few weeks, the heavyweight division, especially over here in the UK, has been under a lot of criticism because we were all hoping to get some sort of announcement between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight title. That's not happened. Team Usyk have said they've moved away from negotiations, and then Frank Warren said that they'd hope to sort of go back into negotiations for late December for an undisputed clash. There's rumors that Tyson Fury could fight Andy Ruiz as a warm-up fight leading towards that fight. But if this tournament was to happen, and as Spencer Fearon said, in the interview that I did with him today that a tournament like this has happened in the mid '80s when you had the likes of the Leon Spinks, the Trevor Berbicks, Mike Tyson. He goes, so it is possible that it could happen. But if this tournament was to happen, what do you think are the key stumbling blocks?
I don't think there are stumbling blocks. Again, the one thing that, and I keep going back to this, the skill challenge promotions is, we put on fights for the fighters and for the fans. We work with all the fighters, which means we work with all of the promoters. We don't have network conflicts. We don't have promotion conflicts. We don't have those kinds of conflicts at all. When a good fight happens and it's good for boxing, then we'll put it on and we'll make it happen. And it's just right now, that was our third fight that we did, with the Paul Fury fight, and Badu Makabu Jack fight. And that was our third fight. And now really we've got the precedent, we've got the foundation of laying out what the future of these events holds. What stumbling blocks there won't be. We have a great relationship, and I have a terrific, personal relationship with Shelly Finkel, who handled Deontay Wilder. We have a great relationship with Eddie Hearn, seeing the past two fights. Eddie and Frank, almost, weekly conversations with them about different landscapes and different things that could happen. The Warrens, with Tyson Fury. Tyson was in Saudi for the last fight. We've worked with the Furies. We've worked with the Warrens on several occasions. Both George and Frank, we have a great relationship with. Bob Arum, great relationship with. And of course, probably the easiest ones to work with are Aegis and Alex on Usyk's side. You could probably do a handshake deal with those guys. They're that easy to work with. There are no stumbling blocks. I think the stumbling blocks are everybody around, everybody that comes in between, everybody that's not amongst those names that we had mentioned. And at the end of the day, the fighters are the bosses, and that's one thing that Prince Khalid's very adamant about. The fighters want the fight, then we go ahead and make it work. Everybody works for the fighter, and we have to all make sure that everybody's very clear about that. I think that when Tyson wants to fight, Tyson Fury, he's going to say, I get the fight done. George, Frank, go out, make the fight. Bob, go out, make the fight, make sure the terms are right, and that's when we all sit in a room and we talk. Moving forward, with the Jake Paul Tommy Fury fight, that was the first fight that I kind of grabbed the reins and did everything moving forward. And moving forward with all the future negotiations, that's how it'll be. So I do not foresee any problems whatsoever. And if any problems come up, the biggest problems in boxing are usually, finances and not agreeing to those things. In our situation, we're very fortunate, we're very blessed to be in a position where that's not really a stumbling block for us. So that's why you won't really see that much, that many hurdles or, issues that would prevent fights of this magnitude happening. But I think in the very near future, I'll be back. I'm home for a couple of weeks, enjoying the last week of Ramadan with my family, and I'll be right back to Riyadh, God willing. And we're going to get back to putting together a schedule, announcing some big fights, announcing some dates. It's going to be very exciting. The landscape of boxing is going to be very, very exciting, and Prince Khalid is to thank for that.
Well, fingers crossed. I mean, listen, all boxing fans want to see the best fighters fighting each other, and we're hoping that we can continue 2023 to be a successful year for boxing. We're a week away from Tank Davis versus Garcia, Haney versus Lomachenko, Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez. These are fights have all been announced within the last few weeks. But I've got to get your take on something. I mean, as I've mentioned before,
Sure.
Fury Usyk, whether you want to say it collapsed or it was just unable to be made. What did you have that down to, that fight not being able to be made? And again, what do you think was the number one issue with that fight not being able to be made?
Again, I've been on record saying this before, is when Prince Khalid gave me the honor of coming into this position, the Usyk Fury fight had already had discussions and negotiations far before I came in. So I asked His Highness, I said, if it's okay, I'd like this fight to kind of subside in terms of everybody that was dealing with it, to continue to deal with it and see if we can get it over the finish line. If I come in and I start asking questions about who said what was the purse split, what was this, what was that, who was promised what, it would just take up too much time. And at that time, there was a deadline that was set that it would have just, hindered the progress of the fight. Put that aside. And I said that to say, how much, I'm privy to from previous, conversations and promises that were made. Moving forward, once I did step in, I was listening to the conversations and giving my advice of probably what should happen. I think that there was a lot of miscommunication. I think there were just probably too many people involved in it. And in a fight of that magnitude, we're talking about the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. It's not a small fight. So I remember even Prince Faisal said one Zoom call that he got on, there was 17 people on the call. you don't need that many people. You know, in every side brought their people in and their advisors and their legal representatives, and listen, you put the core people together, you make the agreement, everybody puts their teams together, one agreement goes out, team A redlines it, team B redlines it, come back, make the agreement, everybody's good, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But the money was never an issue, because the money that was offered there was a premium. Prince Khalid knew it was a premium price. Everybody knew it was a premium price. And the biggest indication that money was not a factor, and mind you, and I know that there's been talks about, well, you know, Saudi pays the most and it ruins the market. Well, listen, if that's the case, then why didn't the fight get made in the UK then? Because the money wasn't the issue. It certainly wasn't the issue in Saudi. The money they were offered, I mean, it was bewildering to me how a fight couldn't get made when, you know, respectfully, the purse that was paid to one fighter would probably have been, I'm more than certain it would have been how much the whole fight could generate with both guys anywhere else. So regardless, I don't point a finger and point blame. And listen, at the end of the day, you know, it just wasn't meant to be. And I know that's so hard for an avid boxing fan to take. Because what do you mean it could, sometimes fights just aren't meant to be. But moving forward, I think that once we eliminate all the extra unnecessary, non-primary people that can represent the fighter, then I think we're gonna have a lot less traffic in the way to be able to get to where we need to get to. And once I start, and now that we're moving forward, that I'll have these discussions, they'll be very fast. I don't think that these negotiations will take long at all, as long as all the parties want to fight. If they do, then it'll be very easy to make.
I mean, I know at the moment you're probably limited to what you can say, but a lot of people have been asking questions in terms of like dates and who broadcast this tournament that people are talking about. What can you? Is there anything you can tell us about potentially which channel would broadcast this in the UK? Because Joshua is currently with Matchroom and DAZN. You've got Tyson Fury over with Queensbury Top Rank. So how would a broadcast situation work for a tournament like this?
All right, so you're getting me to commit that there's actually a tournament. So before saying that, I'll tell you, if that fight happened, and if we came forward and we made that announcement, and if and when we were ready to make that, all of those issues all work themselves out. Again, we work with everybody. This is the way that Saudi does it. We do buyouts of fights, and then we shop and we place the fights where we want them placed. So those aren't issues at all. Again, we're not tied in and locked into anything. And all of our partners, they have partners that are very understanding. And at the end of the day, everybody just wants this to make good business sense for everybody, which it should. And so it's not at the expense of fighters, and it's not at the expense of the fans. And by the way, that's why boxing is it's so defragmented that you have a network that won't allow a fighter to fight somewhere else. You have a promoter that won't allow a fighter to fight somewhere else. It's just we're so problematic in being able to make good fights because of those issues. And I give a lot of credit to Dana White and the UFC and how they did it. It's one promoter, one network. Number one fights number two. The champion fights the number one contender. That's just the way the fights work. And one belt. It's a clean system. And sometimes you'll have fighters that have to make their mandatory here, make their mandatory there. Different people step in the way. Sometimes it becomes problematic like that. But the solution to that is exactly what Skill Challenge Promotions is doing, is being able to put the fighters and the fans first, and being able to pay premiums to make sure that those fights are all made in the manner that we make them, and offering and delivering the biggest fights that there are.
Okay, Amir, I always enjoy talking to you. I always love getting an insight from you about the boxing world. And
thank you.
As I mentioned just a little while ago, we've got a mega showdown to look forward to next weekend between Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia. Great fight. Everybody's looking forward to it. A lot of people are already saying it's going to be a candidate for fight of the year, and the fight hasn't even happened. But floor's all yours. Break it down for me. What do you see happening? What type of a fight do you think we're in for? And if you were a betting man, which I'm sure you're not, who are you putting your money on to come out on top?
Well, you and I both know I'm not a betting man.
I know.
But if there's ever a 50-50 fight, it's this. You got this lightning fast speed of Ryan Garcia, You've seen him on the canvas. You've seen him get back up. You've seen him tested, and you've seen him go through the ups and downs of his career. He's had some mental challenges and some emotional challenges that he's overcome, and those make guys a lot stronger. Then on the other spectrum, you have, Gervonta Davis, who, is a tank. He's, hard hitting, mini Mike Tyson. The question is going to be, for me, what happens in the opening rounds? How does Gervonta deal with Ryan's speed? Is he going to be able to deal with the left hook? What happens when Ryan touches him with the left hook? And on the contrary, what happens when Tank feels that power that when Garcia feels that power that Tank hits him with? What's he going to do at that point? If it comes down to a boxing match, who wins the boxing match? If it's into a slugfest, again, is it going to be the speed? Is it going to be the power? I'm telling you, it's a 50-50 fight. And I know it sounds so cliche-ish, but the fans win the fight. That's really what it is. And kudos to Mayweather Promotions, to Leonard Ellerby, to Premier, to PBC, Al, to Oscar, for everybody to come together, Zone, Showtime, everybody that came together to make this fight happen. Because at the end of the day, these are the kinds of fights that need to happen to keep boxing alive and to give the fans what they deserve. And that's the best fight in the best. So Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia is the best fight in the best. And then again, you're already talking about what's next. Then Shakur, everybody else that's flying there. So very, very exciting fight. I'll be ringside for us. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you're a very, very lucky man to be ringside for a fight like that. Amir, listen, I've taken up enough of your time. I know that you've got a flight ahead of you within the next few hours. So thank you very much for taking your time out to speak to us. Really, really appreciate it. And a safe flight. Enjoy the rest of Ramadan and Eid Mubarak.
Thank you, brother.
And thank you very much for your time, and thank you for talking to Lights.
Eid Mubarak to you. Eid Mubarak to you and your family, Faisal. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure, brother.
Thank you very much. Amer Abdallah, thank you very much. Bye.